And so we looked at each one of those levels when we tested Trent to see if there was any area there that there was some weakness that we could work on, exploit to try to improve. And we found some weaknesses. We found a really big weakness, actually, which is interesting.
So I first came to know about you when you did your work with Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I found that really fascinating documentary that I watched. Could you tell us a bit how that opportunity came about to work with Trent? Because it must have been a massive opportunity for yourself.
It was something that I was very happy, obviously, to do. I'd already done many years of work in many different sports, in baseball here in the United States, and with the Olympics. I was already at the Beijing Olympics. I had a team in Tokyo Olympics, hockey teams, NBA basketball teams, NHL, colleges. So I've done a lot, but I hadn't done a lot of work in football, in European football, specifically the Premier League, which is the top level football in the globe. And then I got a call from Red Bull that they were putting together this documentary, interested in trying to understand how Trent's vision worked, how he was able to use his eyes to make these crosses, these amazing corners that he's known for. What is there in the vision that lets him do that? And is there anything we can do to identify weakness or to improve that even further? And so we were on the project before COVID started. We spent a lot of time developing what we're going to do, how we're going to test them. COVID kind of put a delay on this for a while, but then starting at the end of last fall, I'd say, when things started looking a little bit better, maybe, actually got my first vaccine in November of last year. And so I was already vaccinated with 2 vaccine shots, and Trent already had COVID. So he was already gets vaccinated, and looked like we were able to find a window between the January and March, April period of this year, where we were able to get to Liverpool to do some testing with him face to face, do some training through the internet for several weeks, couple months, and then go back and retest him with some challenges that were pretty unique that the team and I developed together to make sure we really pressed him to the edge of what he could do.
Yeah, no, the documentary was exceptional. If anyone hasn't seen that, better go check that out. So I know you go through it a lot in the documentary, you show a lot of the actual activities you carry out with Trent. Could you tell us, like, if people haven't seen it, what sort of things you did and how you managed to help him improve his vision and his crossing and passing, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way to think about vision in sports really comes down to something we call the sports vision pyramid. We wanted to make sure that, for example, the bottom of that pyramid, which is the vision in each eye by itself, was as good as it needs to be. And we can talk about how we tested that. It's a pretty unique test. Then we looked at how he uses both eyes together, the next level up. Then the question is, how does he use that visual information to make a decision? Next level up, how does he use that decision coordinated with his vision to make a motor action? In his case, with his lower extremities, with his legs, to be successful, and to make sure everything is timed perfectly and accurate and so forth. And so we looked at each one of those levels when we tested Trent to see if there was any area there that there was some weakness that we could work on, exploit to try to improve. And we found some weaknesses. We found a really big weakness, actually, which is interesting. And then we had other areas we just improved everything to make it better. And his skills really improved, visual skills really improved throughout the course of the testing and the training. And actually his game, I think, if you look at Trent's performance from the January area of the year, and you look at last season to how he did just before he was selected for the England team, finally selected for the England team, just prior to the injury, look at that performance. I think you'll see a difference there. And there's a lot of reasons why players play differently, but my hope is that some small part of it was because of the improved vision we gave them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's quite fair to say that was a bit of a low point in his career at the beginning of last season, and then the way he finished the latter part of the season was kind of like back to like world class Trent Alexander-Arnold. So how did the whole, when you meet someone like Trent, someone so high performing, how do you first go about setting like a training program, and how do you know how often we want to train with him? What sort of homework does he have to do? How do you go about doing all of that?
So all the program was decided ahead of time before I ever met Trent. When you're speaking with a professional athlete, you have the ability to look at his previous plays on videos. You have an opportunity to research his background and how he plays and where his weaknesses are and strengths. So that's what I did at the end of 2020. It was COVID. No one was going anywhere. Everyone's home, so we had plenty of time to do that kind of research, put this plan together. And I came there, the team, we were prepared with a specific agenda, if you will, of where we're going to put Trent through. I didn't know how he was going to do, but I knew what tests I was going to look at. Once we had the results, I spent that night after we finished testing him, kind of putting together what areas we have to work on, what we don't, a program for him. The typical program is 3 to 5 days a week of training. Each training session is maybe 30 to 40 minutes, depending on what we do. And we try to mix it up and keep it interesting and vary the different tasks. So that part I knew, but I didn't know what I was going to plug in until I had the results of his testing, which then made that plan reality.
Wow. So how good is Trent compared to some of the other athletes that you've worked with?
Well, Trent is pretty good. You know, what's important to understand, and this is interesting. I think people don't realize this. This is not a cookie cutter, one size fit all field. You know, if you went to your doctor and, you know, you said you had a headache, he doesn't take out the menu and say, headache, I do this and this and this. You know, he says, well, let's find out why you have a headache. And depending on why you have the headache, we're going to do a treatment X or treatment Y, right?
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I know you actually managed to like measure his improvement. So could you tell people how you're able to measure that sort of thing? Because sometimes it's quite difficult to know if your eyesight's improved, and how much did you actually improve with yourself?
So eyesight's a very large term. So there's lots of different pieces to what eyesight is. You know, we checked his vision, but I'll tell you the one that dramatically the most improved, and that was his visual concentration and his ability to track multiple targets. And that's a test that's very challenging. If you do it ever, it's really hard, because after a few seconds of watching what you have to watch, you start thinking about other things, and then you lose it and you don't get it right. And so we always want to test and train on different systems. You really should never train somebody and test them on the same system, because they just get good at that app, if you will, right? You want to make sure you're training the ability, not just how to run the app. And so what we did is test Trent. It's like a tongue twister. Test Trent in the beginning, you know, on one system, and at the end we retested him on that same system. But in the middle, we use other things to train that ability. And some of those were cool. Some of those were just apps on his iPhone. Other ones involved head-mounted displays in virtual reality, where he had to kind of interact in 3D with targets. And we used that to train his skill, and then we retested it, and we showed over 200% improvement in his ability in that skill. And if you think about on the soccer pitch or the football pitch, tracking multiple targets sounds kind of important.
Yeah, no, and like you could tell the way he progressed in the season. Was there, obviously, in my opinion, I think he's one of the best like passers, crossers in the Premier League. Was there anything in particular you saw that when you worked with him that he that small detail he'd improved because of the work he did with you?
You know, we wanted to do two things. We wanted to kind of highlight and maybe make a little bit better his already very good skill, you know, to put the ball from one side of the pitch to the other side of the pitch, you know, completely throw off the defense, you know, is something that Trent is really skilled at, and something that Liverpool has leveraged, obviously, to be successful. His corners, his ability to, I forget a couple of years ago, you know, he walked away from the corner, then also turned around and you know, I think it was Barcelona they played.
It's Barcelona. Yeah.
And they, you know, that you know, he knew what he was doing. He was totally acting. He knew exactly where he was going to put the ball. He timed it perfectly to make sure that, you know, I forgot Thiago, who was it who put the goal in, but
Origi.
Yeah, really. Yeah. To do that, you know, to do that timing, that's Trent. So I knew he was good at that. But we also wanted to make sure his defense, you know, was up, because he's gotten a lot, I think, of criticism as being, you know, a wonderful offensive defenseman. But we wanted to make sure that was good. So 3D vision, his close work with someone is important. His tracking, obviously, ability is critical when you're going back in defense. And so we tried to highlight some of those areas also. And you know, I think we saw improvement. You know, it's a short time to work with someone for just three months or so. It's hard to really prove scientifically that this one thing we've done has made a change on his pitch performance here. But the other papers have showed these improvements and these effects on players and other teams. What I did with Trent is I did something a little bit unique with Trent, but the general theme in this area is not something that's unique. I know for sure there's a couple other high-level Premier League clubs that do this sort of thing. The one I'm thinking right now did pretty well last year, and it's something that if you're a club that doesn't do it, it's really something you want to think about, because there's really low-hanging fruit here where you can make a big improvement in your athletes. You would never ask your athlete to go out and play with his eyes closed on the pitch. That would be ridiculous. Well, why have him go out and play with one eye or half an eye? You want to optimize everything you can, and especially if it's non-invasive, easy to optimize. It's not extra physical activity. It's things that can be done off the pitch that will make a difference, as we show with Trent, in performance. Hopefully it's interesting.
Yeah. So
no, it definitely
I'm loving it
is.
so far.
I'm getting sucked in.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So now we like kind of spoke about how like Trent is in terms of his performance. He's quite famous for that. I want to know, like, you work closely with him. How is he as a person, and what sort of like mentality does he have? Because obviously he's like a winner. So does that come across in like the way he looks at life and how he observes things?
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's the part that's the unknown. The vision part and the testing and the training, I do that all the time. I'm pretty comfortable with that. But every player, every high level player is different. And I've worked with thousands of professional athletes. People, it's kind of funny. I sweat, I lose all my hair. People are making 10 times, 50 times, 100 times what I'm making, and they're coming in and they're a third of my age and so forth. And so it's you never know how you're going to connect and connect with somebody, and that connection becomes important, because we call doctor-patient relationship, the relationship between the sports vision trainer and the athlete. If there's a good connection, then there'll be good results. If the athlete doesn't believe in what you're doing, then you're going to be butting heads, and you're not going to get what you want. And so that first time I met Trent, that was probably the most nervous I was in the entire production, because I didn't know how we were going to hit it off. And you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and that first relationship was key. So they actually filmed it 2 or 3 times, so that kind of made it a little bit more fun. And I got to say hello to him beforehand also, and we kind of hit off. I could tell that he was a little bit suspicious, didn't know really anything about me. I don't think he spent frankly much time researching me. I'm sure you spent more time researching me.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he was, I got to check the guy out, make sure he knows what he's talking about, and so forth. Now, fortunately, we started with the testing, and the first test I gave him was a really hard test. And I think you can see in the video, in the movie, you can see his reaction when we finished, because it's a test of checking his vision, and he was convinced he had good vision. He never had an eye exam since he was 11 years old.
Yeah,
his age, he was 22. He was convinced his eyes are fine. And here's this doctor, with speaks English funny. He's from Liverpool, so I speak funny English, and giving him an eye test that is incredibly difficult. That he struggles to get to get the answers on. He doesn't know if he saw anything correctly. And I think at that point he understood this is not a regular stuff we're doing here. We're doing stuff that's targeted to an elite athlete, that we're going to push him to the limit, and I'm going to make sure he can see what he does. And I think that started the relationship where he kind of trusted what I was doing. And I could see that there was connection there. And then as we went on with the training, it got to be kind of fun, because he was trying to beat himself, the scores. He was trying to get to the top of the table on one of the systems. When he was competing against other people, he would get frustrated when he missed things. He would be happy when he succeeded, and we were able to share that together. And I think as the weeks went on, we got a bit more connected in him trusting me, me working with him and seeing progress of that.
Wow. So is there anything about his personality or him that surprised you when you met?
Yeah, you could tell that Trent is going to go far in his sport. He is somebody who is not at all happy with you did fine. I think one time, if I remember, I'm not sure if we got in the film, but I told him he did good job, and he was like upset. Like I can't just do a good job. I have to do like the best job. And so it's that attitude of wanting to always be number one and being able to put in the effort to try to get that and to achieve it, I think is what separates elite athletes from everybody else. And in his case, probably puts him at the top end of the elite athlete, because I've worked with many. I've worked with some, that were happy where they are and they don't want to do anything more. They were just coasting. And I've worked with many that are at the good in their position. They want to get better. They want to be the best in the team. And that's Trent. Trent is not going to ever be happy with how he plays unless he's able to beat Messi and Ronaldo, on a one-on-one goal scoring opportunity. Then maybe he'll be happy. But besides that, I don't think he'll be happy, because he always wants to be better, which is good, because that's what you want on your team.